Hey there, Nick with CC Minis here. It is Orktober the 48th, and today I'm going to show you how I painted all of these orcs in less than 12 minutes per mini. How many orcs exactly? 100 orcs, enough for 5 full troops in 10th edition 40k. I'm going to try to paint these boys as fast as possible. So I'm going to bring out every tool in the toolbox and even add in a couple new ones, including an outright sinister technique responsible for ruthless increases of efficiency and productivity during the US Industrial Revolution. But before we get to that, let's get through some base coating. The first tool we're going to use is of course the Airbrush. This is a cheap portable one that I've been trying out recently that has a few features that are pretty neat, like a gigantic replaceable cup, allowing me to mix enough dark gray primer to cover 100 plus orcs. Similar to how Scratch Fashion created Orktober, when he mixed together sugar, spice, and everything nice, but accidentally knocked in a bit too much DACA. I started out with priming 3 darkest dungeon minis, because I found when working on personal projects, 3 to 6 minis at a time hits the perfect balance between being relaxing and feeling like I've made good progress at the end of each painting session. Anyway, let's prime up 100 orcs. I got through a good chunk of the models, but I had to switch to using a fat brush to finish off the last few orcs when the portable airbrush battery died. One of the best ways to set yourself up for success in a speed paint is to use underpainting, which I'm doing here via yellow-white zenithal highlight. I built up the highlights slowly, being very intentional with where they were placed and how bright I wanted the area to be, and avoided areas that would be blacked out later for dark leather bits or metallics. This type of purposeful underpainting will pay dividends throughout most of the model, so it's worth investing some time in the beginning to get it right. I was able to get the zenithal step done over the course of a night in just 71 minutes. The last thing we're going to use the airbrush on is the base coats of the skin and leather pants. I start with the green skin, applying a lighter but still full coverage coat to the top parts of the arms and face, letting the purposeful highlighting from the zenithal coat show through. As I move towards the underside of the skin, I sprayed more, allowing these parts to get more saturated in paint and turn darker than the top bits. When I moved on to the tight leather trousers, I airbrushed in a similar fashion, lightly on the upper parts of the pants and a bit darker where the evil suns don't shine. The base coating of the skin took about 112 minutes, and the brown took only 52, which is fantastic, but it's not going to last long, because now we gotta switch to a regular old brush. And there is not too much to say about this first brush step in particular. It was about as vibrant and exciting as the color being laid down: gray. I simply did my best to avoid painting over the skin or pants to avoid needing to clean up any areas already base coated. All in, this step took me nearly 2 hours, 112 minutes. That total obfuscates some information though. The first few minis I mistakenly tried to be careful around the belts up near the orc shoulders, and I was averaging a little over 3.5 minutes per mini. After realizing this mistake and painting over the straps, which I'll touch up again later, I ended up cutting that time down to about 2 minutes per mini, which adds up quick over the course of 100 models. Now when I'm working on a project like this, I often post whip shots and share them with my Discord and sometimes Instagram. Shameless plugs, the links are down below. Please follow me on Instagram. I'm very lonely over there. After posting, one of my friends and fellow miniature enthusiast BP Customs, I'm gonna link his channel down there too. He's great. He made a frog bot. It's amazing, go check it out. Well, good old BP mentioned something that really worried me. He enlightened me that if one of these steps took 5 minutes over the course of 100 minis, that adds up to 500 minutes, which is over 8 hours. And the prospect of taking 8 hours to complete just one step scared the shit out of me. That's just too much time. And after the first brush step, I knew I needed to reevaluate my strategy and brainstorm some groundbreaking solutions to revolutionize the painting process and in turn, make the world a better place. I had to turn to one of the darkest, vilest corners of the world: corporate efficiency techniques. Specifically, I'm going to cover the technique of time and motion study popularized by these two fucks, Frank and Lillian Gilbreth. You may have never heard of these two, but they are the direct inspiration of the book turned film turned better film, not really based on the book, cheaper by the dozen. They're the reasons why you see soldiers tear down and put together their guns blindfolded. And let me tell you, Frank and Lillian were the fucking worst. See, their business was a consultancy, which was hired to go to factories, film people doing their job, analyze the film down to the frame, figure out a quicker way to do it, and then tell the workers how wrong they were, and that they needed to do their job in a completely different way from now on. They were the corporate and manufacturing managerial equivalent of your mom telling you that there's only one way to fold your towels, and you, sir, are doing it wrong. They accomplished this through their own special system, measuring actions in what they called Thurbligs, which is literally Gilbreth backwards. Now, subjecting this level of micromanagement on a whole workforce is just evil. Don't do it. But subjecting yourself to it, that's not too bad, right? So I looked back through the footage of me painting through the lens of Thurbligs. And a warning, this is gonna get pretty nitty-gritty and lame, but trust me, we can talk about some cool stuff once we know all these terms, so I'll get through them pretty fast. These are all pretty simple to grasp, but some of them are either superfluous or not at all relevant to mini painting, so I'm just gonna skip over those. Search is where you are trying to find something with your eyes. This could be your paintbrush, anything you need and have to look around for it. Select is finding a specific item in a group of multiple similar items. For us, this could be grabbing the right paint from our rack, or it could be picking out the next part of the model to lay down a brush stroke. Grasp is simple. You grab something. Position is when you move something to be in a different position, like twisting a model to get to the next part of where you're going to paint. Release load. Basically putting something down. But with this one, you want to keep in mind how the action of putting something will affect future steps. Okay, with all that groundwork, let's see how we can apply this to batch painting. The first thing I noticed when reviewing footage was how long it took me to pick up and then replace each model. I know it's a super simple thing, but it never occurred to me how much time this action could add up, and the solution is pretty simple. What if instead of picking up one model at a time, you picked up more? I'm sure you've seen people batch painting with minis on popsicle sticks, whatever the fuck this is from GW, and it makes a lot of sense through this lens. Luckily, a couple days into the project, Zach from Go Magnets reached out to me to test out their magnet trays and send over some feedback. These are intended to be used to transport minis using magnets, but when I saw these trays, I knew they could be useful for painting and printed some out. By the way, his Kickstarter for these just funded successfully. Congratulations, Zach. I'll put a link to wherever you can get them now that the Kickstarter is over. Pretty nifty. I loaded up all of my Orks to cut down on the time needed to search, select, grasp, and release my loads when painting minis. I was intentional when loading my boys into trays, doing my best to make sure as many of the same posed model as possible were on each tray, which will help me tackle the most time-consuming part of painting based on my time motion review, select. After reviewing the footage, this is really the biggest time suck in batch painting. Not only does it take time to look over each model and pick out the next part, it's all wasted when you pick up the next model in line and it's a different sculpt. And you have to go through the motions of finding the next parts over and over again. And this doesn't just apply to different parts of the model. It can be even individual brush strokes. If you have 5 minis of the same sculpt lined up in a row and need to do a brush stroke, just do it on all 5 minis. Keeping these dark forbidden techniques in mind, I was able to make some changes to how I was applying the black contrast style paint to all the bits that would be either leather or metallic. A simple but often ignored tip here is to use the right size brush for the job. This particular brush was perfect for hitting the leather straps in just one go, but not very good for the bases or boots. And for those, I ended up using a much larger brush, more suitable for those parts of the minis. All in this step was the longest by far, coming in at 288 minutes, or about 2 minutes and 45 seconds per mini. Thank goodness I put all that thought into how I was going to tackle these. If I didn't have these models on these trays, I'm confident that I would be over that dreaded 5 minutes per mini average for this step. Next step was to take some metallic paint and do a dry brush all over the parts that I wanted metallic. With a black base coat, dry brushing metallics is always a good choice when speed painting. Doing this step felt so fast compared to the black base coating step, and I flew through it all in just 47 minutes. After the metallics, I brought out some bone paint to hit the orc teeth and the hat tooths. This is usually a quick process for smaller units of orcs, but for 100 it took just about 52 minutes. Next up was some copper to give these boys a bit of metallic variety. I used Pro Acryl Bronze for this, which I love as a brass paint. If I were to do this again, I think I'd use a thinner paint. Over the 42 minutes needed to complete this step, the paint was starting to get a bit gloopy. Another speed painting classic is next, oil wash. Now, I know a lot of people are apprehensive to this technique. I was. And honestly, for this type of painting project, bog standard Nuln Oil would do the trick and would not add any time to the project at all. In fact, as far as drying time goes, it would cut down on it drastically. But we don't count drying time here. I just really enjoy the look of oil washes, and they are cheap as chips compared to regular acrylic washes. So when washing 100 plus minis at once, they are the clear choice for me. To try to cut down on some of the dry time, I did decide to remove the excess wash before they dried, cutting down on the need to reactivate with mineral spirits, and ended up waiting for them to dry again. Once that wash had cured, about 24 hours later, I brought out a dry brush to quickly give the bases some more definition via a gray dry brush, before bringing out a nice highlight green. This was another long step, but keeping in mind what we learned earlier with the black step, it didn't take nearly as long as it could have. When I did one highlight area, I was able to quickly tackle the same area on each of the grouped models. The bright green I used was slightly translucent and not at all chalky, which meant that I could do an all over coat of the skin where I wanted it to be brighter, knowing that the dark shadows from the oil wash and all the airbrush work would still be there, showing through in the end. All in all, this step took 66 minutes, which means we're starting to get close to our 12-minute per mini goal. But that's okay, just a few more small details left. I love the green, so the next step is to add in some red to contrast and complement the green skin. I was tempted to do some of the armor panels red too, but that made me think of Christmas, and dear God, it's not even Thanksgiving yet. Why am I seeing all this Christmas shit? It's everywhere. I swear to God, if I start hearing jingle bells before November 31st is over, I'm gonna lose my mind. All in, the red step took 36 minutes, and after that, edging the bases with black added another 29, which left me with arguably the most important step, the knob cigars, which took 3 minutes total to paint all the brown and then add a nice little cherry on top with red. And that's it. Here are my 100 plus boys, 104, in all of their glory. All in taking X minutes, I didn't add this up. All in taking this many minutes per model. Up there's the math. What a project. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even learned a thing or two. Huge shout out to the coolest people in the world, my patrons. Thank you all so much for supporting these videos. If you want to watch another Orky video, you'll love this one right here. Until next time, y'all, stay healthy and take care. Bye-bye.